everybody. This is Alice Ginsberg with yet another travelogue. You may remember that I had presented a travelogue of Jerusalem all by itself. And today we're going to go on a Zoom tour of Israel. It's not going to include Jerusalem, but it's going to include just about every place else. We are going to go to Arad, which is down in the south, where the Israeli Air Force Museum is located. We will go to Sde Boker, which is where David Ben-Gurion is buried, and that is in the Negev. We will go all the way up to Haifa and Tel Aviv and Yaffo, and all the way up, here's Haifa in the north, to Akko or Acre, to Tzipori, which is Sepphoris, which is just between Haifa and Nazareth. We will go to Tiberias and Safat and the Golan Heights and the Lebanese border and the Syrian border. So we have a lot of ground to cover. Let's start. Here, if you look closely, we are in the Judean desert, just outside on the other side of Jerusalem. And if you look closely in these hills, look for the blue roofs, the small blue dots. This is a monastery that has been carved into the rock in the Judean desert. We were not allowed to go in. It's admittance by appointment only, and I did not have an appointment. But even the outside and this vista are really interesting. Dates back to Crusader times. You'll notice the Crusader Tower here. So it dates back to the 1200s. And here we are at a very famous military outpost. This is Latran. Latran was a British stronghold. It is located between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And you can, if you look at the cement above this doorway, you will see all the bullet holes from the War of 1948. You will also see lots of Israeli flags in preparation for a ceremony that was going to be held there the following day, because it was Memorial Day and then Independence Day. Now, Latran is famous because of all, regretfully, all of the people who died trying to lift the siege of Jerusalem that the Arabs in 1948 launched against Jerusalem, using Latran as their major linchpin of this siege. There was only one road back then that connected Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and Latran straddled the road, and many attempts were made by the Palmach to get around it, and they could not do it. Finally, they did it. And how did they do it? They did it by reading the Bible. And when they read the Bible, they found, the Old Testament, of course, they found that there was a wadi, a ravine that went around Latran, and they used the Bible to locate the wadi, and under cover of darkness, they were able to circumvent Latran and lift the siege of Jerusalem. Today, Latran is the site of the Armor Museum, and there are tons of tanks and armor exhibited here, as well as a movie. And this is myself and my husband in 2011, and we are on one of the tanks. This is the plaza in front of Latran that was built. You can see the Abrams tank on a pedestal here. That is the model of tank of choice these days. Uh, well, it was up until about 2011 for the Israeli Defense Force. They have much more sophisticated and advanced tanks today, but here is your Abrams tank. You have the Israeli flag, and you have the flags of the armor divisions. And on this wall are engraved all the names of people who lost their lives trying to take Latran. As I said, this was during a time when we were there for Israeli Independence Day. And these are fireworks over Haifa Bay. It was quite spectacular. And the mood is extremely infectious. People are patriotic. They drape their balconies, they drape their cars with Israeli flags. They wear headpieces in their hair with Israeli symbols. There's a lot of dancing and concerts. We went to a concert across the street from our hotel in Haifa in a park. And I have to tell you, we're not fluent in Hebrew, but the mood was absolutely infectious. Everybody was singing and dancing and joyful. More fireworks. You can see the port of Haifa here in the foreground and the way that Haifa Bay forms a crescent. Here we are in one of my most favorite places in Israel. We are in Tzipori. This is between Haifa and Nazareth. Tzipori, sometimes known as Sepphoris, was a Roman town, and there are spectacular Roman mosaics in Tzipori that have survived since the 1st century AD, and some have survived from before the time of Jesus. There is a synagogue in Tzipori. This is it. And you cannot have services there. The roof it's been sheltered by a roof that was built over the remains. And as I said, you cannot have services there, but they do have a cement plaza, a small cement plaza outside of the area that I'm going to show you, where people can hold bar mitzvahs, weddings, and such. It is a beautiful hilltop spot overlooking the lower Galilee. And here are some of the magnificent mosaics. The pole here in the almost the center of the mosaic, that is a Nile water measurement pole, where it was created to depict how the Egyptians measured the level of the Nile to know when it was going to crest, when it flooded. After all, it is the floods of the Nile that create the Nile Delta and the most fertile place in Egypt. Look at the detail on these mosaics. Here you have a lighthouse, and this is supposed to depict the river, the Nile River here, with the wavy lines and the fish. And this is the view from Tzipori. You can see the remains of Roman columns, and you are looking out at the lower Galilee. Where the orange roofs are, you can sort of make those out. That is an Israeli settlement. But just beyond, in the hills, is Nazareth. Another view of some mosaics at Tzipori. They are absolutely fabulous. You can also see remains or the tracks of Roman chariots in the stones at Tzipori. The Mona Lisa of the Galilee. That is what this mosaic is known as. Check that out. Is that not magnificent? Even in this Roman mosaic, there is a Hebrew inscription. Now, if everything were normal and we were not in a state of pandemic, I would be celebrating, God willing, my 50th anniversary with my husband in Sapporo in October of 2020. We have reserved this national park for a sunset ceremony, and we have it all planned out, and we've invited guests, but I think we will probably postpone it until the spring of 2021, after hopefully there's a vaccine for the coronavirus. But Sapporo is definitely one of my most favorite places in all of Israel. Here's another famous place. We are in the Banias National Park, where you walk along this platform that you see off to the left, along this raging stream of the clearest, greenest water, green and turquoise water that you would ever hope to see. And it is rushing water. It is positively beautiful. And you walk along on the platform all along this stream. This is in the north of Israel. Until you come to this double waterfall. And it is positively beautiful. Again, this is the Banias National Park. But on your way from the Banias National Park to the Golan, as you enter the Banias, this is what you see. This is a destroyed Jeep from the 1967 war. And it was a casualty of the war. It belonged to the Golani Brigade. The soldiers that were in this Jeep survived. Now we're jumping around just a little bit, and I'm hoping that some of you may have already been to Israel and may recognize this building in Tel Aviv. This is the Dizengoff House. Meir Dizengoff's, he was also the mayor of Tel Aviv for a long time. This is his house. And this is where Israeli independence was declared. Why? Because look at the windows. They were afraid of attack, and they decided that this fairly windowless building would be an ideal place to cram 250 people into a room to declare Israel's independence. And across the street from the Dizengoff House is the City Hall of Tel Aviv, where you see a magnificent mural that depicts important landmarks, important timelines of the city of Tel Aviv. This is what the entire mural looks like. It goes on almost for a city block. This is the detail on the mural. People over here on the right are the settlers, and then the burgeoning of the city with this depicts some of the famous people that live there. And these are the immigrants down below carrying their satchels. And here you see a donkey, and he's drinking water. the first light pole in Tel Aviv when electricity was first introduced to the city. A very famous intersection in Tel Aviv. I took this picture and included it to show you the names. Ben Yehuda, famous rabbi, and Allenby. General Allenby liberated Jerusalem from the Ottomans during World War I. I don't think you'll have any problem reading this sign. Just understand it's from right to left because it's Hebrew. The golden arches are on the right instead of the left. And you cannot buy a cheeseburger at a McDonald's in Israel. Here we are at Titus's Arch. This is a replica of Titus's Arch, and it overlooks the city of Tel Aviv. Very symbolic because Titus was the Roman emperor who dragged his Jewish subjects off to Rome in slavery, in chains, which is what is depicted at the top. The real Titus's Arch sits in the Roman Forum in Rome. The city of Tel Aviv. This is what you see from the replica of Titus's Arch. When we were there, we also saw a young couple getting married right there, which was really kind of special. The modern city of Tel Aviv, with your minaret in the center for the muezzin to call Muslims to prayer, and high-rise apartment buildings, high-rise office buildings, a very modern city, yet with the minaret. The detail off of Titus's Arch. This represents a bull and of the sort that, making reference to the sacrifices Jews made in the time of the Second Temple, which of course the Romans destroyed in 70 AD. The Lion of Judah, also on Titus's Arch. And remember, the top of Titus's Arch was carrying the Jewish people away in chains. We are now in Jaffa, and all of the streets in Jaffa, this is a street sign in Jaffa, and they are all extremely artistic. This area, I believe, is known as Neve Tzedek. Mazal Teomim. Mazal Dagim, the street of the fish. And here we are. This is Yafo or Jaffa, which has quite the artistic colony in the city. All sorts of shops and galleries. Gabrielli, he is known for his weaving, and if you want a Gabrielli talus, it's very special. It's also a little on the pricey side. Kedumim. And here's a children's theater. You could see the adults taking children to Hamista, Theater Hamista. I'm sorry, Hasimta. I misspoke, Hasimta. So it's a children's theater in Jaffa. And you can see the steps going up to a gallery or a house, cannot tell which, above the street. In 1740, the first Jewish hostel in Jaffa was established here. It included a synagogue and a mikveh. The synagogue reopened in 1948 by Libyan Jews. It is still used today. Bamakom hazeh, on this place. And this is my husband's idea of having his picture taken, where he is shaking the hand of the statue. He likes gag photographs like this. You can see there's a gallery in the background, and this statue is reminiscent of the French army when they came through Egypt and the Middle East under Napoleon. This sign does not need much explanation. It tells what you need to be doing with your pet. This site was the site of the frontline headquarters of the Etzel forces that marched on Arab Yaffo following a series of attacks and sharpshootings in the Jewish border neighborhoods and in the city of Tel Aviv. It was from here that fighting forces received their orders during the campaign to liberate Jaffa. So the 20th day of Nisan, 5708, 1948, right around the time of Pesach. And there were 2 3-inch mortars in the courtyard that bombarded Jaffa and contributed to its surrender. The founders of the neighborhood of Neve Tzedek, there's a huge mural to them in it's Tel Aviv, but it's very close to the Jaffa, where Tel Aviv melds into Jaffa. These were original settlers. The rabbi, the policeman, the banker. Notice the coinage in the upper left-hand corner is in German and Hebrew. Shows a ship coming to Jaffa. Jaffa was known for Jaffa oranges. It was a huge port for agricultural export. And here you have your Jaffa oranges on the right. And here you have the port in the upper edge of the mural. Another mural depicting Neve Tzedek. This is a school, and the children are outside, and they're leaving school in rows at recess time. Here you have a merchant with his cart and horses, and the train. The train came to Tel Aviv, and the old Tel Aviv train station is now a huge outdoor market. It's a fabulous place to go. You can buy all sorts of artistic goods, food, candy, whole entire meals. There's a place to dance. There are like a carousel and other climbing things for little kids. It's a really fun place. But that was only created in the last decade. Up until then, there was this train station in Tel Aviv. Something that you might not think of when you think of Israel, but Tel Aviv is a modern city, Planet Spa, romantic living. And this is something you see in Neve Tzedek. On the outsides of the buildings, really whimsical sculptures. See the kids sitting on the bench, climbing the shutters. Very, very whimsical. You see this on buildings all over Neve Tzedek. The housewife leaning out of her window. all these sculptures here on the buildings. It's really a fun neighborhood. There are cafes there, which are very pleasant. There's a wonderful ice cream shop, best ice cream in Israel, in Neve Tzedek. And here we are in the place in Tel Aviv where Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. You can see the stone says Yitzhak Rabin. He was assassinated by a Jewish zealot who was very upset that Rabin was going to establish a two-state solution. In Rehovot, which is the site of the Chaim Weizmann Institute, and it's a city quite close to Tel Aviv, there is an underground bullet factory where the site has been preserved. It was the only place in Israel during the 1948 war where the Jews could manufacture ammunition, and they had to do it clandestinely because the British would not give them ammunition and had outlawed ammunition for the Jews. When the British left Israel, they favored the Arabs, and mostly due to their interest in oil. And they did not allow Jews to have arms, artillery, planes, or ammunition. The Jews had to be very creative, and so they were. So this is the entrance to an underground bullet factory in Rehovot. Where did they put the factory? They put it under, it was a kibbutz, and they put it under the laundry because the laundry equipment made such a noise that no one would identify that there was anything going on underground. Here's the entrance. The stairs down are quite steep. You could see it was in this building where all the laundry machines were housed. Again, this is in Rehovot. They had, as I said, it was a kibbutz, and they had all kinds of services and all kinds of resources. As in a kibbutz, this is the sign for the bakery, and it supplied bread to the kibbutz, and it served as a concealment for the basement ammunition factory. The oven weighed 10 tons and was mounted on tracks over a shaft used for lowering machinery and raw materials into the factory, which was in the basement. The oven was then on its track, and it was pushed back over the entrance. Nobody was going to think that you were going to push this 10-ton oven anywhere. They also used the oven chimney to expel the stale air from the factory. Thick mattresses were placed under the oven to suppress the noise of the factory machinery. This is the stairway. You can see it's a spiral stairway, and it's kind of difficult to get down. Here's the machinery that was used to manufacture bullets. It was an assembly line production, and there was first you had to collect the metal, you had to melt it down, you had to mold it, you had to shape it and create the holes and the lines in the metal in order to have it fit properly into your machine gun or rifle. And at the end of the line, there was one sole person who activated the bullet by snipping off the one edge of it. This is a picture above here of the woman who did this, and she had to be very careful because one mistake and the whole place could have blown up because it was full of ammunition. This is also where they stored ammunition. And she used this tool to activate the bullets. Very painstaking work. We have gone from Tel Aviv and Rehovot to Arad. This is the site of the Israeli Air Force Museum. Now, you may not know this, you might, but maybe not, that the Israeli Air Force in the 60s, in the 50s and 60s, was made up of foreign-made airplanes. The state of Israel did not have the resources to manufacture its own airplanes. This is a French Mirage fighter. Now, there was a boycott against Israel instituted by the 5 nations, the United States, Britain, France, Russia, and Britain, France, Russia, and I'm missing one. Germany, I guess. Anyway, they boycotted Israel. You know that the United States sells armaments to Israel quite often and in quite large quantities. But that was not the case in the 50s and 60s. The first appropriation for arms for Israel, and they were all defensive arms, was towards the end of the Kennedy administration, and that appropriation did not come to fruition with actual arms delivered until the Johnson administration. So Israel at first was flying French Mirage fighters. And here you see a very touching and famous picture. It's kind of hard to see because I had to take it indoors and you see the flash of the camera. But this is the entrance to Auschwitz. Flying over the entrance to Auschwitz are 3 Israeli jets in the missing man formation. A very touching picture, which you will see in the Israeli Air Force Museum. This is a trainer plane. This is what they take their recruits into the Air Force. This is what they take them up in for their first flights in order to get them acquainted with airplanes and flying. Here you see in the background all the insignias of the various Israeli squadrons over time. There's all sorts of models of airplanes in this museum, which is in Arad. This is the first airplane in the Israeli Air Force. It was made out of smuggled parts. The parts were smuggled individually into Israel. It's a German Messerschmitt that came from Czechoslovakia. The white plane with the black pointy nose here, that is a Levy fighter. It's the only type of airplane that is manufactured totally with Israeli parts. They determined after they were able to develop this airplane, they actually determined that it was too expensive to produce in quantity. Here's a better view of it. This is a Levi fighter. Another French Mirage. From Arad, we traveled to a place called Sde Boker. Sde Boker is a kibbutz in the Negev. Ben-Gurion's favorite part of Israel was the Negev. He thought, and he was right, that the Negev held the key, the wilderness held the key for the sustainability for the state of Israel. And here we have a massive ibex standing on the rocks in Sde Boker, where Ben-Gurion is buried. David Ben-Gurion. He was born in Poland and came to Israel in the early 1900s. He would have been about 18 years old in 1902. Died in 1973, the father of the state of Israel. He was the leader of what was called the Yeshuv, the settlement. That's what Israel, the Palestinian state of Israel, was called before the war in 1948, before the Declaration of Independence. He was one of the founders of the Technion in Haifa. The Technion is Israel's MIT. And he was Israel's, of course, first prime minister. These are the Nabatean Hills, which you see from Ben-Gurion's grave. Look at those colors. It's an absolutely fabulous windswept vista. This was his favorite place on the kibbutz. We visited his home in the kibbutz. He had a massive library. He wanted to retire and live a simple life in the Negev, and the world beat a path to his door. He had a bust of Winston Churchill on his desk, not unlike John Kennedy. He had ceiling to floor, wall upon wall of books in his home. He had the Mishnah on a shelf, all the volumes of the Mishnah on a shelf next to a book by Mao Zedong. And this shows you a little bit, gives you a taste of what the Negev is like, with the winding road through the hills of the wilderness. The wildlife of Sde Boker. These are ibexes. This is an Arab chafla in the Negev of Israel. And we went there for a camel ride and a meal and hospitality. We were treated to music because our host was going for his master's degree in Arabic music at an Israeli university. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, but I'm not sure. And these are the camels. I'll tell you, if I never ride a camel again, it will be too soon. They are nasty beasts. Our host is making us tea. This is very customary at the beginning of a meal in an Arab village. He is Bedouin, he is Bedu. And the Arab chafla is meant to give you an idea of what Bedouin life is like. This was our host, and he is singing for us And you could see the gentleman in the background with the tea. And we were reclining on these cushions. Here he is making very strong Arabic coffee. I love strong coffee. It was great. We each got a turn at doing this. This is one of our friends. There were 3 of us in our tour group, and this is our friend taking a turn at making the coffee. And here is our host again with it looks like a mandolin, but it is not. It is an Arab instrument. This was looking up at the roof of the tent that where we were sitting and partaking of the tea and the coffee, and we had a meal there as well. The Dead Sea. If you go to the Dead Sea now, probably there will be a lot less water than there was in 2000. This was 2008. The Dead Sea is eroding at a horrifying rate. And it's a real problem, but it's also a conflict of interest for the Israelis. They want to preserve the Dead Sea, but they also like harvesting minerals from the Dead Sea because there's a fortune to be made in cosmetics and creams from the Dead Sea. Now, Jordan also borders the Dead Sea. There's the Israeli side and the Jordanian side, and the Jordanians are also mining the Dead Sea for its minerals. Please notice the hole here in the cliff in the center of the picture. And you can see another one up and to the right, okay? These are the entrances to Qumran. This is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. They were discovered by an Arab boy, a shepherd, who was throwing stones against the cliff while he was tending his sheep. One of the stones entered one of these entrances and hit a shard of pottery and made a resounding noise in the cave. And that is how the urns in which the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered were found. Here we have some wildlife in the area of Qumran, a weasel. And we are now in Ein Gedi. Ein Gedi is south of Qumran and north of the Dead Sea, just north of the Dead Sea. Ein Gedi is where David hid out from Saul when Saul was trying to kill him. It is where David wrote the Psalms. And you can see it is full of caves and shelter where one can hide and very clear spring water. This gives you an idea of the clear spring water, the waterfalls of Ein Gedi. It is a very tranquil, spiritual place. It's also a fairly steep climb up to this triple waterfall. We are looking down at the winding Roman road from the desert floor to Masada. The square over to your left, going towards the top, it shows you where the Roman encampment was. And there was a second Roman encampment over here to the right. But this is the winding road up to Masada. It is quite steep. The view of the Dead Sea from the top of Masada. The ruins of Masada. Now, King Herod had a castle here. He was quite the builder, and he built the castle on the north face of the mountain because that's where the best breezes were. But there was an entire village that was built here in the early first century by the Jews, and they were holding out against the Romans. The Romans laid siege to Masada, and in 73 AD, the Jewish rebels drew lots and committed suicide. Rather than surrender Masada. Jewish soldiers in the IDF are brought here to receive their commissions at sunrise. The desert floor. This is what the surrounding hills surrounding Masada look like. It's a very emotional experience to go to Masada. This is the entrance to a synagogue in Masada. Where these people are standing up here was a rampart for defense. It also housed a synagogue. The Roman encampment below. This is how you get to Herod's castle. You walk on this walkway here and you walk around to see the remains of Herod's castle. I have his castle in another set of slides, which I won't include here. They have some really amazing, colorful fresco mosaic type artwork that has survived. His castle was on terraces. There was a swimming pool in the lowest terrace, and then there were servants' quarters, and then his palace was on the upper terrace. Looking out at the Dead Sea from the ramparts of Masada. And now we are going north in Israel. We are at a place called Beit Alpha, where there is an ancient synagogue which dates back to Mishnaic, to the Mishnah times. These are mosaics at the synagogue of Beit Alpha. This is what the synagogue looked like. It's a replica. Again, these are the mosaics. And you could see there was a Hebrew inscription here if you look closely at the slide towards the bottom. Looking down at the mosaic of Beit Alpha. So a replica of a place called Beit Shan. Beit Shan was a Jewish settlement that became a Roman town. You could see the Roman arena here in the center, and something like the Colosseum over here. This is a model of what Beit Shan looked like. There is a tell here in Beit Shan that is extremely high. A tell is a mound, and archaeologists love these mounds because as you dig down, you go from layer down to layer down to layer. And you can get down in some of these tells to biblical times. And then you have Roman times. And then you have Crusader layers. Then you have Mamluk layers, Ottoman layers, and so forth. Layer upon layer of history and civilization. This is Beit Shan in the northern part of Israel. This is what it looks like. Here is the Tel in the background. Here are the Roman columns. This was the main street of Beit Shan. Gives you a better idea of how massive this Tel is. This was a fairly large Roman city, and it was an oasis, as you can see, the palm trees here over to the right. Look at that Roman sculpture work. A Roman sarcophagus. The arena with entrances. There was an upper and a lower arena. The lower seats were the better seats. The upper seats were the cheaper seats. In this arena, you can go down in one corner, and if you say something, the acoustics are so terrific that you will be heard in the far other corner. These were the entrances to the arena for the spectators. Here we are in the bathhouse at Beit Shan. It had several. Built in the 4th century CE, this bathhouse was used for 200 years. So they would heat these stones. They would make a fire over here in what looks like a small chimney thing, and they would heat the stones, which would heat the water above it. There would have been a floor here, and it became like a sauna. The columns of Beit Shan. The main street. 2 chariots could pass each other on this street. The Tel is in the background. There was a major earthquake in 847 AD in the entire region. Wherever you go in Israel and in Petra, all over the Middle East, and in some parts of the Mediterranean, you hear about this earthquake. What was so interesting about this earthquake was that all the pillars in Beit Shan that toppled in the same direction. Another view of the arena. They actually hold concerts here. The Israelis hold musical concerts here even today because the acoustics are so fantastic. But if you go, you better bring a seat cushion. This is something personal. My husband, Steve, had a cousin named Arthur Sagerman. He was a dentist, and he went to the kibbutz of Neve Etan for 1 month every summer for something like over 20 years. And he would supply and offer dental services to the inhabitants of Neve Etan for no cost at all. He didn't charge them anything. He totally donated his services for a solid month out of every year. And when he passed away, the kibbutz erected a playground for the children in his memory. Gan means garden, so this is Gan Arthur, in memory of Arthur Sagerman. This is what you see right outside of Neve Etan, outside of the kibbutz. You've got your chain link fence, and you've got danger, unexploded mines, because you are right on the Jordanian border. That's Jordan over there. The Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee. You see several groves of eucalyptus trees. You are on the Golan side of the Kinneret, and the Syrians had military encampments here in the Golan, and they occupied, before 1967, they occupied the high ground here, and they would fire down on the Israeli settlements that lined the Sea of Galilee. Israel recruited a spy who infiltrated the government and the army of Syria, and he suggested that since it was so hot here, with the sun beating down on the soldiers, he felt sorry for the soldiers, and he supplied all the eucalyptus trees for the Syrian army. So eucalyptus trees grow fairly fast. And in 1967, the Israeli Air Force was told to bomb the eucalyptus trees, the eucalyptus groves, because that's where the Syrian military bases were. That is one of the secrets of how the Golan was captured. We are in Tiberias. Now we're on the Israeli side. The Golan is at the top of your screen, and we are in Tiberias on the other side of the Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee. But I took this picture to show you the layers of history. You are at the Sea of Galilee, which was very important in Jesus' time. You'll remember that Peter is a fisherman on the Sea of Galilee. And so you have Jewish remnants from that time, which was the last few centuries before Jesus and the centuries immediately after Jesus. And you have the remnants of a Crusader fort here on top of those. And then you have your beach resort for today's Israelis. This is a hotel for tourists here in the background. Maimonides is buried in Tiberias. This is his grave. Now you'll notice you only see half of it. That is because it is split between the women's section and the men's section. You are in the women's section. Maimonides' wine. Couldn't resist this photo. And now we are in Safat. Safat was a small town in the far north of Israel. It's known for Joseph Caro, who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Conduct, the Rules of the Table, the how to live your life, which was written in the 1400s. And Safat is also the site where the Zohar was written. The mystics who created and studied the Zohar gravitated to Safat. It is also an artist's colony today. So you are in Joseph Caro's synagogue in Safat. This is a Geniza in Joseph Caro's synagogue, where old, damaged Jewish texts with the name of God in them are kept. Instead of burying them, they kept them locked in this Geniza. The Torahs. These are Sephardic Torahs. The engravings. Jews from Toledo in Spain came to Sfat as a result of the Inquisition. This is a plaque commemorating that. Here you hear a lot about Jews who left the Iberian Peninsula because of the Inquisition. They would come here to Palestine, or Judea as it was called then. They came to Sfat. They would eventually, the commercial families would go on to Baghdad to make their fortunes, and some of those would make their way to Bombay or Mumbai, such as the Sassoon family, which I talked about in my India travelogue. Joseph Caro's synagogue, the interior. This would be the bima. This is the ceiling. The cedars of Lebanon here and the palm trees. Rachel Deutsch, the first midwife that was certified in Safat, was born here in Safat. She was the granddaughter of Rabbi Shmuel Heller. She was already the mother of 7 children. She went to Vienna to acquire a profession, and Theodor Herzl aided in getting her accepted to midwifery studies in Vienna, and then she came back at the turn of the century. She died in 1965. Here is where she lived. And this is a photo of my purchase from the Safrai Gallery in Safat. I came face to face with this Chanukiah, and I just had to have it. It is one of 100 that were made. It is numbered and signed, and I have it in my apartment. I, however, do not use it to light Hanukkah candles for obvious reasons. We are now on the Lebanese border. Stop. The border is in front of you. This is Lebanon, the Bekaa Valley. Oh, I am mistaken. I am sorry. Let's back up. Stop. The border is in front of you. Yes, this is Lebanon here, but you're in far northern Israel. You're in Metula. And this is a memorial to soldiers and young women who were massacred by the Arabs in 1948. This is the northernmost point in Israel. This memorial is just down from what's called the Dada Lookout. Here you are again in the Golan. This outpost here, this pillbox here, was a Syrian pillbox. Today, as a result of the 1967 war, the border with Syria is just on the other side of this pillbox. A wonderful view of the vineyards of the Golan. The Israeli wine business flourishes around Haifa. It also flourishes here in the Golan. And you can see Tiberias across the Sea of Galilee. We are in Kitzrin. Kitzrin is in the northern part of Israel, in the Golan. It was a Talmudic era village. This is what's left. You can see it was a two-story house here. Kitzrin. This was the synagogue in Kitzrin. The Kenetra Lookout. This is on the Syrian border. You are looking at Syria. And in the foreground here, very close to the lookout, this is the United Nations encampment for the United Nations Peace Force. We came back to the Kenetra Lookout in 2016. There were no United Nations trucks there anymore. And in the hills over here on the horizon, a battle was going on and the sky was red. Haifa Bay. Haifa, this is the Baha'i Gardens. Now, this is not a Baha'i temple. It's the Baha'i Gardens and Mausoleum. There are 13 levels to it. Tourists are only allowed to go to certain levels. You have to be of the Baha'i faith to go to the uppermost levels. Better view. The gardens are absolutely incredible. This tree probably dates to biblical times. The mausoleum. That is the Mediterranean Sea out there. Absolutely magnificent gardens. And this is an Israeli patrol boat. You are again on the border with Lebanon, but this time you are at Rosh HaNikra. The Ottomans built a railroad here, and the Israelis have built, this is the steepest vernacular that goes all the way down to the sea. And it's for commercial and military purposes. You don't ride on it, but it's the steepest in the world. It is right on the border of Israel and Lebanon, where both meet the Mediterranean. The entrance to the railway tunnel. This was a very strategic place to be captured during World War I, when the British retook the area from the Ottomans. These are the caves at Rosh HaNikra. This is what's underneath all the limestone that you saw in the previous picture. This is all limestone here. And the railroad tunnel was hacked out of limestone, and there are caves here. And again, the Israeli patrol boat toward the upper left of your picture. At Rosh HaNikra, you are closer to Beirut than you are to Jerusalem. Almost twice as far. And now we are in Acre, sometimes known as Akko, in a Crusader fort. And I took this picture to show you the scale of these people. I'm not very far away from them, to show you the scale of the thickness and the height of these Crusader walls. You might remember the movie Exodus. And in this Crusader fort, there was a bathhouse that the Ottomans had built in the Crusader fort. It was also a maximum security prison, and it backed up to the bathhouse. And there was a very famous escape of Irgun terrorists during just prior to 1948, where the Israeli terrorists, the Irgun, the guerrillas, were sprung out of this prison. They had people infiltrate the bathhouse, and from the bathhouse they got into the prison, and that's where they planted bombs in order to break the massive Crusader walls to allow the prisoners to escape. This is the top of a Crusader pillar. The vaulted Crusader architecture, and a Crusader tombstone. Note the date, 1290. A church in Akko, but it flies an Israeli flag. And kids like to go out here on the ramparts of the fort and jump into the sea. These shadows here, these were kids who were jumping into the sea. It's pretty high up. Another Roman arena. This one is in Caesarea. Herod was quite the builder. He built Caesarea, he built a castle in Masada, and of course he built the Temple Mount. He was an engineer and an architect. And he was the governor of Judea for the Romans. Here you can see the track of the Roman circus in the middle of the picture and part of the arena. In the distance on the Mediterranean, you could see a Muezzin's tower to call Muslims to prayer. These are the remains of the pillars from Herod's palace. He really did know how to build. The breeze here is absolutely delightful. And the Israelis have a huge power plant right here on the Mediterranean. It was coal-fired. I don't believe it's coal-fired anymore. I think it's natural gas-fired now. A better look at the track for the Roman circus. And a Roman aqueduct. An original Roman aqueduct. And we will bid farewell to Israel with a sunset in the Mediterranean. I hope you have enjoyed this tour of Israel, and I hope this gives you a taste of the variety, the richness of the land, the richness of the history, the richness of the culture of Israel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. For more videos, please visit www.cje.net/cyberclub.